Prison to Prosperity. That story doesn't define you by any means, but it is part of who you are and how you've come up.
I had a great childhood up to about like 6 or 7-ish, and then my parents divorced. So I'm going to my dad every other weekend and trying to go for him to figure out, like, how do I defend myself or what do I do? Shortly after that, he died from in a car crash, and just everything from that moment just started tail spinning, man. I couldn't focus at school. I was always told that I was a fuck up. You weren't going nowhere in life. That spilled into my adulthood and into prison. A lesson I learned when my sister died from a heroin overdose when I was in prison. The quality of your life is going to depend on the quality of questions that you ask yourself. I just finally said, like, God, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What can I do right now to find happiness and peace? That question right there was a fucking game changer. I don't know how I'm going to turn my life around and how I'm going to do it, but I just know I got the strong reasons why, and been moving in this direction ever since.
You have built your own brand to expand your impact. This alpha underdog term that you coined, what does that mean to you?
People can feel when you're being fake, and people can feel when you're not being real, but when you just be you, share your thoughts and let your personality shine through, that's all I do, man. I just show up, I'm vulnerable, I talk about my losses, I share the insights I glean from them, I keep shit real, and I don't hold back.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. And this is always your friendly reminder to do all the things like, subscribe, share. We're always bringing the heat, great episodes, and that is not changing today. Maybe you're already on the journey, or maybe you dream of getting out of corporate America to build a passive income business for yourself. Today's guest has done just that, and very successfully, might I add. CEO of Underdog Empowerment, the ultimate branding officer, and most importantly, husband and father of 4. You get to hear from my friend Zach Babcock today. Welcome to the show, brother.
Dude, Josh, thank you for having me, man. And I love that, most importantly, father, husband. Amen.
Amen. It's always the most important title.
Without a doubt.
So it doesn't matter what we do successfully in our businesses. If we don't have our families, we don't have the respect of our spouses or kids, doesn't matter. I want to start, man, because you got such a unique story, and I just love your journey and your heart. So before we get into your journey from prison to prosperity, I want to talk about this alpha underdog term that you coined. What does that mean to you in your journey and your community and just your ethos? What does alpha underdog mean?
Yeah, man. I mean, the word itself is like kind of contrasting in it, like alpha and underdog, right? So kind of like, it's like, wait, you know? And what it means is the alpha underdog, like, you can have all the odds stacked against you and everybody counting you out and thinking that you're a nobody, but that's their definition of you. That doesn't mean that that's your truth. So you can be an underdog all day. And if you rise up and you do everything that you're supposed to do, you know, mind, body, soul, relationships, finance, alpha underdog. So that's what it is for me. It doesn't matter what kind of odds are stacked against you or who's counting you out or who's overlooking you or any of that. What matters is the definition that you give yourself and the meaning that you put behind that.
Love it. I coined the phrase alpha vulnerability, also seemingly contradictory, but I think that a true alpha can be vulnerable. Alphas that cannot go down that path, it tends to be more false bravado than it is true alpha-ness. Yeah, I just made that
without
word
a doubt,
alpha-ness.
Man. Yeah, I love that word. Hey, without a doubt, man. And like, dude, like most of these quote unquote alphas today, they're like what you just said, it's bravado, it's ego, it's beat on the chest. Oh, me. And they can't put themselves in light of doing anything wrong, because that's a chink to the armor, right? That's a crumbles the ego. And so, like you said, man, just like you said, a real alpha is vulnerable, keeps it real, can take the hits and takes the responsibility and the what's the word I'm looking for? The ownership of whenever you do something wrong, you know?
Yep, absolutely. So I preluded this, and then we skipped over real quick because we got to go. So we got to go back. Anyone that caught what I just said there, prison to prosperity, let's take us back to the intro, right? So this is a time reflection for you, and I know, is it 9 years tomorrow? Is that your release date? Is that right?
Man, what is tomorrow? Tomorrow is,
November
Shit.
2nd?
Yeah. So I actually got October 2nd, 2014. So it was 9 years and 1 month, will be tomorrow. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. So, man, that's awesome. So 9 years, now just over 9 years. Break down that story, man, because you got vulnerable in New York City and talked a little bit about it, but I know that story doesn't define you by any means, but it is part of who you are and how you've come up. So I want our audience to understand, the troublemaker years to being in prosperity, like you mentioned.
Yeah. I used to tell the story a lot differently until until about 2021, where I started focusing on a lot of personal work, healing unresolved traumas and going back and dealing with the shit that our egos stuff and hide away from us for many, many, many years until you go and deal with it. For me, I grew up, man, I had a great childhood about up to about like 6 or 7-ish. And then my parents divorced. We moved from a nice neighborhood to Ferguson, Missouri, which is ghetto pretty much. And as soon as I moved over there, I'm 7 years old and I'm getting picked on right away. And so I'm going to my dad every other weekend and asking him, like trying to go for him to figure out like how do I defend myself or what do I do, and shortly after that, he died in a car crash, and just everything from that moment just started tail spinning, man. I started getting in a lot of trouble at school, couldn't focus at school. And I was always told that I was a fuck up. You weren't going nowhere in life. You're weak. You're nothing. Like literally my school teachers and counselors always said I was a fuck up, wasn't going nowhere in life. All the new kid, because I was a new kid, told me I was weak and all this other shit. And that I wasn't, and so like, that's the programming that I was receiving throughout my childhood and adolescence. I started getting locked up in juvenile detention centers, psych wards, rehabs, boys' homes, you name it. I was in all of that shit. And yeah, man, that spilled into my adulthood and into prison or whatnot, and did over 5 years of my life in prison. And all of that changed when I went back to prison 20 days before my twin sons were born. That was a moment when I said, dude, I am done. I don't know how I'm going to turn my life around and how I'm going to do it, but I just know I got the strong reasons why, and been moving in this direction ever since. So
you made the decision. Your twin sons are born. You make a decision. And you had a daughter before that, correct?
Yeah, she's just like it's my stepdaughter, but might as well call her my daughter.
Okay.
I love her just like my own.
I was trying to because I know you got 4 kids, and I was trying to put that timeline together in my own head. But your twin sons are born. You make that decision. What's the next move for you to start? Because of that, I think a lot of people, whether they go to prison or they're in a rough spot or they just lost their job or whatever their valley is, that next right move, that next decision, that very next thing is oftentimes what makes you or breaks you. So you make a decision after your sons are born. Okay, now what's the next right move?
Yeah, man. I was, like I said, I didn't know how I was going to do this. I just knew the reasons why, right? And so my idea in prison was at the time, this was 2014. I got out October 2nd, 2014. And during that time, when I went back, the Michael Brown shooting happened in Ferguson, Missouri, where I grew up at. And I was on the yard, and I remember they said, "Hey man, your neighborhood's on fire." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about, man?" And they say, "Your neighborhood's on fire. Go turn on CNN." I'm like, "What?" And so I went and flipped on CNN, which is something I don't ever watch anyways, but and seen the news and all the crazy media stuff. And so long story short, I was like, you know what? I don't know how I'm going to get home and provide for my family, but I got all this experience of going door-to-door sales. That was my jam. Anything sales, like what I always did good in. Anything other than that, jobs that I did before never lasted. And so I was like, all right, I got door-to-door sales experience and retail experience. I'm going to create these wristbands and these t-shirts that say I Heart Ferguson on them and go to door-to-door selling them. And that's a hell of a business model, by the way. It never panned out, but that was the game plan, right? Never ended up doing that, by the way, but that was what the plan was while I was in prison for the 8 months before I went home. What actually did end up happening is I got home, and I didn't know what to do. All I knew is that I had to change my people, places, and things, and that's what I did.
Awesome. You've quoted here, nothing changes until something changes. So I feel like this is a good time to pivot to that statement. Share with our listeners the power behind that quote as we think about the story that you just shared.
Yeah, dude, it's everything. Like when I was hanging out with losers, I was losing in life. And when I started hanging out with winners, I started winning. It really is that simple. You're a product of your environment and of what you consistently place yourself in, your environment, your friends that you hang out with, the things that you're doing. And so if you want to get better, if you don't like the results and the shit that you're getting in life, it's more than likely a result of your environment, and you can change all that. You can reach up to people that are doing the things that you want to do and get around them.
So how did you personally change from going from loser friends to friends that we'll just say weren't as much of a loser? I think that's a really hard time for people, right? Like they struggle with because us human beings, we crave connection, and then we also worry about what others think of us. And so you're making a hard pivot, be like, okay, these people are drug dealing, beating up people, stealing shit, all the different things. And I got to break myself away from that if I want to be the example to my sons. Where did you start looking to find those better relationships? And how did you make those? Did you have hard conversations with those people, or did you just say bye to those people forever?
Yeah, it's such a great question, man. And to answer that, for me, it was easier than I guess you would say than most. I don't know, but it was easier for me to do it. For the fact of the pain when I went back to prison and I missed my twin son's birth, like that was fucking painful as fuck, man. I sat there for a month and a half just trying to imagine what my kids looked like. Imagine, did they look like me or not? Until I finally got pictures sent in. And so that pain was great because I was like, dude, I'm done. I'm not doing this no more. And so when I got out, I just quit. I didn't call, and people didn't call me. They didn't reach out to me when I was in prison. You know, they obviously didn't care. And so I didn't reach out, and I just started getting around new people, started looking for that. And what was crazy is I started looking for a job, and I couldn't find a job anywhere. And I was trying to do anything. Like I was like, I don't care. I'll go and work at McDonald's, whatever I got to do to feed the family and shit. Right. And couldn't find a job anywhere. And then this guy reached out to me on Instagram because I was going to the gym a lot and just posting photos and stuff. And he reached out with this health energy drink. It was network marketing. But he reached out with this energy drink shit, and I ended up joining that. I was like, dude, I don't want to buy it, but I could sell that with you or whatever. And that whole thing started. Network marketing, got into that, and that wasn't my thing, by the way. I did that for 2 years, started making $2,000, almost $2,000 a month residual income, which ain't nothing crazy. But at the time, that was a game changer for me because I just came home from prison, couldn't find a job, and was making more money than most of my friends that I went to school with. So it was a game changer there, but. Long story short, network marketing wasn't my thing. It just opened, it brought me down this path of personal development, opened my eyes to what could be possible.
Right. And what's interesting about that, right, is that a lot of people, network marketing, that isn't their jam. However, a lot of those networking marketing people are in some personal development game. And so it's like you're one relationship, one connection away from that next connection or changing your life entirely. And that decision to do that, even though it wasn't going to be your long-term jam, led you to some other things. So how did you get into developing this thought process around starting your own business, starting your own thing that's going to be your purpose and be your fire burning to create that life that you now lead today?
Great question.
It wasn't selling t-shirts, right? So now you start to get to dream space and go down this marketing path that you've built this brilliant brand around. So I was just curious. Okay, the t-shirt thing didn't pan out, although it did have a little bit to do with marketing. So yeah. I'm curious.
It's I think I'm really good at marketing because I felt unseen, unheard, and misunderstood my entire life growing up. And so I think that's why I'm really good at getting attention now, is because I felt like nobody ever paid attention to me back then. But that was just a little side note. But how did I actually get into that? So through network marketing, I was hanging around with those people, and my thinking started changing. We go back to change your people, places, and things. Before I was hanging out with losers, now I'm hanging out with network marketers that are way more ambitious and have bigger dreams than the people that I was hanging out with before. And so that started opening my eyes. And a lot of those, people in network marketing are also entrepreneurs and have side businesses or whatnot. And so it just exposed me to what was possible. And being in network marketing, having the early success that I did, it made me realize, dude, look at all your first job was McDonald's. I lasted half a shift, and then I pulled a Scarface off a Half Baked. I was like, fuck you, you're cool, I'm out, or whatever.
You're cool, I'm out.
And yeah, man. So that was my first job. And then after that, all my other jobs I ever did any good with was either retail or door-to-door sales. And so like when I got into network marketing and my upline, my whatever you call it, the sponsor, your sponsor, right? She got me reading books, personal development books. And so I was like, man, it built up my being around those people and being exposed to all that. And then having the success in network marketing gave me the confidence and the belief to go ahead and start my own thing, which is a whole nother story of itself. But that's how that happened.
No, that's cool. Well, you've had an incredible amount of aha moments throughout your journey here on this physical earth, both life and business. And now you get the honor of teaching those lessons to others. What do you think, which aha moments do you find yourself most sharing with clients, mentees, your kids, all of the above?
Yeah. One that I've shared quite a bit is a lesson that I learned when my sister died from a heroin overdose when I was in prison. That was real painful as well too. And the lesson's really, really straightforward. It's twofold. It's, the quality of your life is going to depend on the quality of questions that you ask yourself. And secondly, what you focus on is what you're going to get. So, when I was in the hole for a tattoo violation, I was getting tattoos in prison. I'd got it was like my 5th or 6th one. And so they sent me to the hole for 60 days.
Hold on. There's a tattoo violation in prison. Like I think tattoos like culture in prison, isn't it?
So what I mean by violation is the CO writes a violation on you, meaning either you got in a fight and you got a violation written, or you got a tattoo and they write a violation, or, you did something that you weren't supposed to do and they write a conduct violation on you.
Okay.
And, yeah. And so
I was just trying to understand that because I was like, I know, like, obviously I know you have a bunch of tattoos, but just my view, not ever having to been in prison, most everyone that's been to prison got tattoos in prison. So I was just wondering how that was a violation.
Yeah, you're right too, man. It is pretty much culture there, but I was sitting down there and I was 2 weeks into my 60-day sentence in the hole, which the hole is a 8x10 tiny little dark, dirty, lonely, depressing shithole with very little to no human interaction. And so I'm down there about 2 weeks into it, and then I get a call where they come tapping on my door and say, "Mr. Babcock, cuff up. We're going to see the captain." I cuff up, shackles on. We go down. He's sitting behind his desk, white shirt, badge on, arms folded, black hat, me mug. "Mr. Babcock, have a seat. How long you been down?" I said, "About a little bit over 2 years, like 2 years at the time." Say, "All right, well, when you come back to the captain's office, it ain't nothing good, right?" And my immediate response is like, "Dude, I don't give a fuck. I ain't saying nothing. Take me back to my cell. I ain't got nothing to say about nothing. Just take me back to my cell." Because I was thinking they were trying to get me to tell on somebody, or somebody had told on me for something that I hadn't gotten in trouble for. I was like, "I ain't got nothing to say." And he was like, "Well, Mr. Babcock, we got a call from your mom. Your sister died from a heroin overdose. She found her dead in the bathroom." And like, I was the last thing I was expecting. And it was just like a shock. And then my vision just blacked out to nothing. And then it came back, and then just tears started flooding down my face. They gave me a 30-second phone call to my mom. I was on there for 30 seconds. We're bawling our eyes out, telling each other we love each other. And then click, phone hang up. And was brought back to, I asked to be put in a cell. I had a cell. Yeah, I asked to be put in a cell by myself just to have some alone time. And luckily at the time, the hole wasn't filled, and the COs weren't douchebags, and they did that. And so I sat there for the next 3 days, by myself in this tiny little dark, little lonely, depressing cell. And all I could think about was all the mean things I ever said and did to my sister, the goodbye that I never get to tell her, all this shit. And on that third day, I was just praying to God, and I just finally said, like, "God, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't even know why I'm still alive, but I know there's a reason. I know there's a purpose, because I'm here right now. What can I do right now to find happiness and peace?" And that question right there was a fucking game changer, because I could have said something like, "Why does like this have to happen to me?" And that's bullshit. Like, that's the wrong question, because whatever question you hear or get asked or ask yourself, your brain is gonna search for that answer. If I'm like, "Yo, Josh, what microphone are you using right now?" You, me, and everybody listening are like, "Well, what microphone is Josh using?" I think it's a Shure SM7B, it looks like, but very nice microphone. But
looks like the same one you're using.
Yeah, good microphones. But you know what I mean? So you got to go and search for the answer. And so I lucked up at the time because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I later on read in a Tony Robbins book that's what I did 5 years later. But at the time, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And the quality of that question, instead of saying, why does this always have to happen to me? That would have got me to look for the wrong answer and answers that doesn't serve me. But saying, what can I do right now to find happiness and peace? It forced me to think, what can I do right now to find happiness and peace? You're stuck in this 8x10 cell, this concrete block, and you can walk 3 steps this way and 3 steps the next way, and that's it. And for me, I realized like, hey, I'll spare you all the details because it was a lot, but basically I got on a crazy OCD routine where I did the same shit every single day at the same exact time and had that cell spotless. Like, dude, you can eat off my floor after like, that's how clean it was. I sweep it with my bare hands. I ripped up one of my towels into a bunch of different mini rags. So I have one for the sink, one for the toilet, one for the wall, one for the floors, like this whole thing. Right. But, and then I would read I was never big into church growing up. I always believed in God, but I never was religious or I'm spiritual. I believe in God. I guess you can call me Christian because I believe in God and Jesus, but I never went to church. But I was in the whole reading the Bible, and that really helped out a lot with when I was going through that dark time. And by the end of the 60 days, man, I was that most at peace, probably one of the most at peace I've ever been in my life. And for the first time in my life, I felt like a man, because before this, my whole life, I would always do things to be accepted by other people. Like, we all do this shit to some degree or another. Like, we all are worried about what other people think about us. Like, it's just human nature. You ain't getting around that. And if you say that you don't, you probably care more than what most people do. And so, at the end of this 60 days, I was at the most at peace that I ever been in my life. And I had finally became my own man, like where I could, when I got out of the hole, I no longer did stupid shit. When people asked me to go do stupid shit to crash out, I would say, no, dude, I'm not doing it. And I would stand up on my own and stuff. And yeah, it was crazy. So that right there, though, asking yourself the right questions and focusing on the things that you can control. Cause like, dude, I couldn't control that. I put myself in that cell, but I couldn't get out of there. I couldn't control them and make them open that door. I couldn't control none of that shit, but I could control what I could focus on in that moment, which was keeping that cell completely clean, getting in positive routines and habits, all that stuff. So yeah, ask the right questions and focus on what you can control.
That's such good feedback and a story to go with it, man. That is so good. All right, I want to pivot to business because I know you got such good stuff to give us on that as well. Outside of helping 300 plus businesses and individuals find their place in the world, you have built your own brand to expand your impact. So what's the noise around Alpha Dog Pound?
A lot of people, I'm going down a tangent right now. A lot of people just a lot of people just getting started out. They don't know who they're trying to help, and their message is all over, and and they're trying to help everyone. And we all know if your message is for everyone, it's going to land with no one because it's too generic and too bogged down and it's boring, whatnot. Man, Alpha Dog Pound is for alpha male entrepreneurs to level up and become alpha underdogs. And what that is so I'll say this right here. I'll just be honest. Usually I don't say this. Marketing, it's all about the golden rule. Marketing is all about selling people what they want, giving them what they want, but also giving them what they need, because nobody in marketing buys what they need. People buy what they want. And so for me, what I really love doing is I love helping men. Since I started doing this shit myself, I know it's the most impactful work that I've ever done in my life. I helping alpha men go and heal their unresolved trauma. Now, I can't do that shit myself. All I could do is share my story, my experience, and maybe somebody hears that and it starts to get them to go down that path. So for Alpha Dog Pound, I lead with, hey, I'm gonna help you build a brand, because that's what alpha male entrepreneurs want to do. They want to build and grow their business, right? They want to grow, build, and dominate, right? That's the whole thing. If I were to lead with, hey man, I want to help you, heal these fucking traumas that are holding you back and causing all this shit within your relationships, the relationships that matter the most in your life, alpha males ain't gonna buy that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, I don't give a fuck about none of that shit. I want to go grow my business or whatnot. So I lead with, hey, I'm help you build a dominant brand, which is exactly what we do in Alpha Dog Pound. And then we get to working on other shit. Especially if you're in the higher level where we get to work one-on-one, we get to go work on that real shit. Like I'll say, I won't say the name because I like to keep confidential, but like, dude, I'll be having a conversation and we'll be talking about marketing, and then I'll start, they'll start saying something or whatever. And you get this, man, you're coach too, man. When you ask someone questions, like they say they can't do something, you ask them why, and then you just keep going until they have to dig down 4 levels deep to find out that is bullshit. And it's just a bullshit story that they're telling themselves. And then they come to that realization themselves. Like that feeling, when I see that click in their eyes, that's the greatest feeling in the world for me. So that's the reason why I do Alpha Dogtown. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. So what are a lot of mistakes marketers make? Because you're in competition with a lot of people at this point. I didn't even notice this until I broke off on my own, sold the financial firm, and now, getting into coaching and building my own brand up. I didn't realize how much noise there was around digital marketers and people. And like, I got someone in my DMs daily, if not more than once a day, that says they can grow my social brand, grow my branding, grow my marketing, all the different stuff. Where's the differentiation with someone that's really good at what they do? Because I know you are, versus some of these hacks that have just built their digital media brand off of cold DMs.
Yeah, man. I don't really have any secrets, man. I just show up and I keep shit real, and I don't try to, what's the word I'm looking for? Put on this fake persona. Like, right now it's really cool in the entrepreneur space. Everybody is a copy of Andy Frisella. They're like a carbon copy of Andy Frisella, and they're trying to, and you got the dudes that, bless their heart, but you got dudes that are not tough in any way, shape, or form, trying to act like such savages and badasses, and I'm like, dude, you would get so much further along if you just acted like the nerd you really were and let your true personality shine through. Like that would actually be able to, because people can feel when you're being fake, and people can feel when you're not being real, and people can feel when you're putting on a front and an act. But when you just be you and share your thoughts and let your personality shine through, that's all I do, man. Is I just show up. I'm vulnerable. I talk about my losses. I share the insights I glean from them, and I keep shit real, and I don't hold back, and my mentor helped me with this a lot, because prior to 2018, I used to wear suits and ties and shit, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with suits and ties, but that ain't me, bro. I don't look. I mean, I'll rock a suit and a tie sometimes or whatnot, but that's not my jam. But I was rocking suits and ties and all this stuff, and like trying to be all like politically correct and proper and shit, and that ain't me. I cuss like a sailor and fucking got beards and tattoos and a bald head. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm not what do you call it, the politically correct kind of person, but just being you, to answer your question, man, showing up and being 100% you, and don't say polarizing shit just to be polarizing. That's so, I get that shit. Those dudes get on my fucking, like, there's guys that just try to be polarizing just to try to be polarizing because they know that's a great way to grow your audience. Dude, if you want to truly be polarizing, just speak on shit that you truly believe. All right. And there's some things that you truly believe that are super controversial, and then you could talk about those things, but don't try to be controversial and say things if it's not something that you truly do believe in. Sorry for getting on the tangent, but no, yeah, man, just show up and be you, be real.
All right. So you gave us some good tactical stuff in New York City when you gave your talk as well. And that's, I think, what I want to make sure that so be 100% authentically you, but also, how do we tell a shit digital marketer or a shit marketer in general from a good one?
That's a great question, man. One, just by their posts, man, just seeing how they post and how they show up and what they're talking about. A lot of times, people can hide behind posts if it's just written, but if they got video, you can't hide. People can, you could see people's energy and their body language and how they move and operate. You can also tell by if the person is all talk and doesn't have actual results. So like what I mean, and a lot of times too, especially if they're just coaches and they don't have any like service or product, that's kind of a red flag right there. But I'm not saying that there is plenty of coaches out there that don't have a product or service, that they're literally just coaches and they're really fucking good at it too. So I don't want to say that, but there's a lot of people out there that don't have a product or service and just try to coach and shit and don't have any results, that's a red flag and you should run the other way.
Oh yeah. Tony Watley and I get on those tangents all the time about shit coaches that haven't built anything before and just now hold themselves out as coaches because they couldn't figure out what they wanted to do with their lives. But yeah, no, that's an agreement. But yeah, that's why I want to get some good distinctions on. Would you say that hitting them up for references is a good plan?
Ask them like what kind of past clients or whatnot.
Yeah,
absolutely. I would. And if they can't give it to you or whatever, make up some shit, that's a red flag. Another red flag for you.
Yeah, no, that's great. So if I'm building my personal brand and continue, so I'm going to be authentic. That's number one, right? You got to be you, not stirring up, controversy just to be controversial. Got that messaging out. What is the best platform in your opinion to grow personal brand on right now?
This right here, podcast. And I'll tell you why. Dude, all right. So I no longer have the podcast agency. It's something that wasn't truly aligned with what I really wanted to do in life. But I had the podcast agency for 4 years, helped almost 300 business owners launch podcasts, top-rated podcasts on Apple, and grow their brands that way. And the reason why I say podcast is because we could record this episode like we're doing right here, record the video with it, 30, 45 minutes, whatever it is. And you could take that episode and then you can chop that thing down and put it everywhere. I'm talking about show notes, email blasts, posts for every single platform, chop up the videos for every single style format, YouTube, the short videos, all that stuff, just off a podcast. And you could do it really efficiently and effectively with all these new AI tools. Like, dude, when I first started creating my brand, we didn't have all this AI shit. Man, it makes life so much easier. So you could take that. So that's one reason why. But the most important reason why is, dude, it don't matter who you are. You could be a freaking ex-convict with absolutely zero business experience, just like I was when I first started out. Or you could be someone that's sold multiple million companies, right? But that you can build your brand so effectively with a podcast. And say you're coming out, you can literally lock in interviews just like I did with people that are way further along with you that are super influential. And by locking in those interviews with these people, that's brand association, which rises your brand in the process. That's literally exactly what I did. Dude, I was nobody, right? And then so I started locking in interviews with Andy Frisella, Grant Cardone, all these big ass names, right? And I would even lock in interviews to go do the interview in person so I can get it on camera showing me sit down with this person. Because everybody, you go to their website, they got featured in Forbes and all this other shit. And like, dude, anybody can pay Forbes to get an article written. Anybody could do that shit, all right? But not everybody's going to get 30 minutes of Andy Frisella's time. You know what I mean? So taking that podcast, you can literally, even if it like, dude, I used to have this lady, she was in a trucking business, and we devised this plan where she used her podcast to interview other suppliers and manufacturers that she wanted to do business with, which is a great way to break the ice. And then boom, that would lead to a lot of business in a lot of cases. Same with loan officers. Like it would help them. Their main frustration was, dude, I want to feel like the rock star. I'm tired of having to beg these real estate agents for deals and yada, yada, yada. And so we would launch their podcast, and then they would interview agents in their space that they would want to do deals with. And then instead of coming from a place of neediness, like, hey, will you write me some referrals or write me a deal or whatever? Now you're coming from a place of power by inviting them on your platform and building that relationship or whatnot. So anyways, I'm going down the tangent, but podcast without a doubt, 100%.
I love it. I think that's a different answer than most people have gotten before, because a lot of people will think social media platform instead first when I ask that question versus the podcast thing. And like you said, you can use the podcast, chop it up and put it on social media and utilize it for reels, utilize it for post content, utilize it in a number of different ways, stories and otherwise, and really get you more bang for your buck and get more awareness and traction in those ways. So no, that's a really good answer. Really like it.
Thank you, brother.
Anything else that we haven't covered on the marketing side that we can give tactical advice that would just help people with branding or stepping into their own to really take their business and or personal brand to the next level?
Yep. I will try to keep this super short. This is something that I work with literally every single person I've ever coached, worked on with, and every single person that we help with our podcast is the main thing right here. And so all this stuff, like with branding, everybody wants to get into like the growth hacks. How do you grow the audience? How do you monetize? How do you yada, 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 all these cool things, right? And And we could do all that, but before we even get to do any of that, we got to nail down the marketing message, man. The marketing message is the most important. And so many people struggle with this, especially like people that are just getting started in business or aspiring entrepreneurs. They really suck at this. I really sucked at it too when I first started. It's just the way it is, because we all think like, hey, I got this great thing and I can help everybody with it. And maybe this great thing can help everybody, but like, if that's your message, it ain't going to help no one, because it's too fucking boring. It's for everyone, which means it's for no one. You got to speak to a very specific person. So I'm going to run through this real quick. Is that cool?
Go, fire away. We got time.
All right. I call this my 4 W's. All right. It's what, where, why, and who. All right. So who is actually first? Who are you speaking to? All right. So this is really, like we were talking about, it's really important to speak to a very specific person. And look, if you're having trouble figuring that thing out, what I would recommend, if you're building a personal brand, all right, this is really simple. All right. Simple doesn't mean easy. It just means simple. Hard and easy are different things, but simple.
Very much so.
Simply, yeah. You got to speak to who you were yesterday or who you were just starting out, or anywhere in between that, because you are that person, you understand them, and you can help them get to where you're at now. And so that's a hack whenever you're deciding who you're speaking to. And I swear to God, some people are like, well, I'm a dude, and if I'm only speaking to this dude at that time, then I'm leaving out all these women that I can help, and yada, yada. Dude, like I said, you got to speak to a specific person. All right. So my message is always towards alpha male entrepreneurs, rough around the edges, who are committed to doing whatever it takes to level up and win. Always speaking to that person. Yet I got so many alpha females in my audience and clients, yet I never made a single marketing message to any of them. It's because I'm speaking to a very specific person, and I'm hitting on their pains and frustrations and their goals so deeply. It's like I'm speaking the conversation that's already going on in their mind, that it attracts anyone that's trying to reach that ideal of what it is I'm communicating, the alpha underdog, right? So who is number one? All right. What is the next thing? What is your podcast about? What is your brand about? Communicate that in one sentence, man. Too many people, they're like, they say some crazy shit like, I'll help you discover the inner you within and bring it to its full potential. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? So one sentence, very clearly what it is that you do. All right. Just one sentence. I help alpha male become alpha underdogs, or whatever. And you can even bust it down and call out the people that you help, and call out the thing that it is that they're trying to get. And you communicate the time that they're going to get it within and the vehicle that they'll accomplish it by. So for an example, I help 6- and 7-figure business owners build dominant brands through social media and networking in 12 months or less. Boom. It's one sentence, but it covers all that. So it's very concise, and you know what it means.
Yep.
Next, where it is that you're taking them. So by tuning into my brand, or tuning into my content, or listening to my podcast, I'm going to take you from X, which is the pain that you're in right now, to Y, which is the future that you want and desire, or that you desire and have faith in. And it got to be those two things, because if they don't have faith in it, man, they'll get jammed up and won't take action. But if you can communicate a future that they desire and they have faith in, boom, it renders them perceptive to change. Last but not least, man, is why should they tune into you? And this is just the same as in whenever you make your product. What's your product differentiator? What makes it unique? What makes it different from the rest? And with this, you can hit on your personality traits. You might be super funny, and everybody else in your space is like boring and just, lame, and it just doesn't really, no excitement, but you're funny and you're educating them at the same time. It could be your story, a stark contrast story from over 5 years in prison to building 6-figure, or from over 15 years in the corporate world, slaving away and hating my life, to building a 7-figure bit. You know what I'm saying? Like the contrast, right? It could be on your story. And finally, another way you could differentiate yourself is how you set up the show, the theme of the show. Like maybe you have, like Andy Frisella used to have that Thursday Thunder, or that Fire Friday or something. You can have like a theme like that on your podcast or whatever, but there's a million different ways to differentiate yourself. You just got to differentiate yourself. So who, what, where, and why. Your 4 W's. Got to nail that shit down, man.
Man, am I glad I asked that question. That was fire. That was so good, dude. Everyone needs to rewind that and make sure they hear it and take those notes, because that was just gold. So good. All right. Before we wrap up today, I always ask this question, and I'm always curious to hear the response from people. What's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most others would disagree with you on?
I got a lot of them, man. Which one though? What would be the best one? I love this question too, man. I'm of the philosophy, like, not all the time, but 90% of the time, if most people do it, I want to do the opposite. And so public schools is a complete waste of time for most people. That's one. Yeah,
well, based on how the teachers spoke to you, I would 100% agree if that's how they spoke to you and telling you were a piece of shit and not going to amount to anything. Because that messaging got embedded in your brain. Just I didn't even get into that when you were saying it, but when you were saying it, I was like, damn. Like, they had a chance to change like right after his dad died, they had a chance to be a bright light in his life, and they fucking blew it.
Yeah, it is what I heard over and over again, and it did affect me a lot until I realized like I used to had the victim mentality and all that shit until I turned my life around or whatnot. And I used to let that be an excuse as to why I was, had the results I did. But at the end of the day, you can't control what happens to you as a kid. And a lot of things, you can't control what happens to you in life in general, but as an adult, it's your responsibility to go back and fix that shit that happened to you as a kid.
Yeah.
And you can always 100% control how you respond to whatever happens to you.
Yeah. I didn't know. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off if you had other better ones that you were thinking of. But I just, as you said that, I'm like, damn, if I had your experience, I would also think that public education was a waste of time.
Yeah. I'll give it another one. Every system in America is designed to keep you weak, confused, and suffering and dependent. School system, health system, food system, how we operate. We send our kids off to school for 8 hours a day, and we go to work for 8 hours a day, and it breaks the family apart. We're designed to be with our family, even after we used to sleep in caves and shit together, man. So anyways, every system in society, modern society, is designed to keep you weak, confused, dependent, and all that shit. That's my belief that we'll roll with.
Well, we got a few minutes. I'm gonna actually speak on that real quick. I think it was Rockefeller that funded put the most amount of money into the public education system in the early 1900s. It was one of those big names. I'm pretty sure it was Rockefeller. It was like it would have equivalated to over $100 million in today's dollars. Funded the public education system because what he wanted was more workers for his factories.
Yep.
Okay. Not a problem back then. Is a massive problem today because the education system has never been reformed from that. So exactly what you're speaking to is a system to keep us to be worker bees away from the family nucleus, away from everything that should be great in our lives. And so, Democrats, if you're wondering about, working for the man, and then you're also rooting for the public education system and the unions that it's beholden to, you have completely contradictory beliefs, and you don't even know it.
You couldn't even tell that.
You get I would bring that up, and they'd be like, "What? Go read the history of the public education system."
That's not true.
It's 100% accurate. So as you brought that up, I'm like, man, most people don't know this. I got to put this on the airwaves. I do believe it was Rockefeller. I could be mistaken on which rich guy it was back in the early 1900s.
It was one of those rich guys.
Yeah, it was one of the rich guys that wanted more people in their factories. And that's how the school system was based, is not to help you become entrepreneurial, not to help you raise a better family. It was to create a better factory worker for the rich guy back then. That was it. And the school system has not evolved since then.
It hasn't. Look, everybody's still sitting in rows in class, raising their right hand, asking, like, all that shit, man. The bells.
Workers, or obedient worker bees, is they're training you from 5 years old to 18 years old. And even in the college education system, when I went to speak and recruit at the college classrooms in the sales and business class, I said, how many people here would prefer to have an all-commission job when they left here or salary? 95 to 99% would raise their hand for a salary job. And I'd be like, why? And they go, well, fixed income or guaranteed paycheck and what, blah, 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 blah. I'd be like, is it guaranteed? I say that it's consistent or fixed until they see you as a liability or until they don't need you or until a down economy. But then is it guaranteed? Certainly not. You're a line item.
Exactly.
And so you start waking people up to a little bit to be like, no, the only way you can control yourself is in your own business or in sales. Because every business needs salespeople. And those are going to be the last people that are cut. The producers are the last people cut. The standard worker bees are the first ones. So it's just interesting how our you brought that up. And I'm like, I had to go off on a little bit of tangent there to help people understand the history. You got to know your history, or otherwise you're born to repeat it. You and I are, as entrepreneurs, and then feeding into people through our podcast and teaching people the game. But we need more of it. We need more people to get on board and more people to help change this country. Otherwise, and Andy Frisella is a great example. He gave up his entrepreneurial podcast to go on more of a political slant and teach people what's really going on. And he didn't have to do that. He's a fucking multimillionaire, soon to be billionaire. Right. But he's teaching people like you and I the game, and to do it in our own way, like you said, not being a copycat. So, man, really appreciate spending the time. It's always good when we can connect, and obviously I know the Spartan audience is going to get a ton out of this conversation, so appreciate you taking the time. Where can they follow you, brother?
Dude, thanks for asking. Underdog Empowerment Podcast. We just had you on the show. You guys can go catch that episode. It was fire. All right. That's really the main place, so underdogempowerment.com. I got all my social media on that website as well, but the podcast is right there. So go check that out at underdogempowerment.com.
You heard the man. Share this episode. Go follow his podcast and get on his social media as well. And he's putting out some funny ass content too. So he is 100% genuinely authentic, and I love it. I love meeting authentic people, regardless of where they came from, who they are. When when you meet authentic people and they're real, you can be real around you. It gives you permission to be real around them. And that's what I appreciate about Zach and the relationship we're forming. And so please go follow him, share this episode. There are some fire marketing tips along with his incredible story. So Spartan audience, remember, good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.